The moment the chapel doors swing open, the bride freezes as the ex steps inside, turning every whisper into a sharp echo. The music cuts off, as if the room itself can sense the trap tightening. The groom tries to reach for the bride's hand, but his glance darts toward the maid of honor, who watches the chaos with a too calm smile that raises every instinct to panic. The priest clutches a sealed envelope, insisting it must be read during the vows, claiming someone requested it, though neither of them did. Guests shift uneasily, phones already capturing every second, waiting for the first crumble in the perfect facade. The ex walks closer, carrying an expression that promises trouble, yet something in his eyes suggests he didn't plan this alone. A tension gathers so fast. It feels like the walls are closing in, as if the disaster has only begun and the worst part is still hidden. What was written in the envelope? Who gave it to the priest? And why does the maid of honor look like she's been waiting for this exact moment? The air turns heavier as the ex moves to the front row, forcing everyone to shift uncomfortably, as though the very seating arrangement now feels dangerous. The bride tries to steady herself, pretending nothing is wrong, but every breath feels louder than the last. The groom looks torn between confronting the situation or pretending the ceremony can continue smoothly, though the maid of honor watches with a barely hidden excitement that betrays her calm facade. The priest stands silently near the altar, glancing again at the sealed envelope as though it burns in his hand. Guests lean together in hushed conversations that swell into nervous murmurs, each speculation more alarming than the last. And even the music that resumes sounds thin and unsure. The ceremony crew attempts to calm things, but the bride's mind races as she watches the ex pull something from his pocket before tucking it away again. A shock of dread ripples through her as the groom's hand brushes hers, trying to reassure her despite his own unease. The maid of honor leans in, whispering something the bride can't hear, her tone too sweet to trust. The priest clears his throat, shifting his weight, clearly wrestling with the obligation of reading the mysterious message. Guests stare forward with expectant eyes, their curiosity beginning to rival their concern, transforming the chapel atmosphere into something fragile and unpredictable. The organ music fades again when someone accidentally bumps into the sound system, drawing nervous laughter that quickly dies out. The bride feels a tightening in her chest as the groom tries to lead her toward the altar, but her steps drag with every inch she moves. The priest looks between the couple and the envelope, as though deciding whether to warn them or proceed blindly. The maid of honor touches the bride's shoulder with an unsettling calmness that only deepens the sense of impending trouble. The ex watches from the front row, eyes locked on the bride with a mixture of worry and determination that suggests he's not here for drama, but to stop something worse. Finally reaching the altar, the bride feels the room spinning as whispers intensify around her. The groom stands tall but carries a tension that makes his shoulders stiffen with every breath. The priest moves closer, opening a small leather book, but keeping the sealed envelope tucked inside as if waiting for the perfect moment. The maid of honor hovers nearby, eyes flicking between every character as though watching a plan unfold. The ex leans forward in his seat, his posture rigid, gripping the bench as though bracing for the next eruption. The air seems to crackle, the stillness becoming a warning rather than peace. As the ceremony pauses in uneasy silence, the bride's thoughts scramble through memories she tried to bury, each one resurfacing with painful clarity. The groom senses her panic and steps slightly closer, though his eyes keep drifting toward the ex as if searching for a threat he cannot yet name. The maid of honor takes a slow breath, watching with the patience of someone waiting for a fuse to burn down. The priest clears his throat and gently suggests they allow a moment of calm, but the bride feels anything but calm. Yes, lean in, whispering theories about the ex's arrival, their imaginations spiraling faster than the truth. The ex finally lifts his gaze toward the bride, and the look he gives her makes her heart sink, not because it shows anger, but because it shows fear. fear of something that hasn't happened yet. The tension swells as if the room itself knows a hidden clock is ticking. The groom whispers softly for the bride to breathe, but the words barely reach her as her pulse pounds in her ears. The ex shifts in his seat, pulling that same folded paper from his pocket again, this time gripping it with urgency rather than caution. The maid of honor notices and stiffens, her calm facade cracking for just a moment before she masks it again. The priest tries to distract the audience by adjusting the ceremonial book, but guests keep watching the ex with fascinated dread. A strange heaviness settles over the room as if the truth inside that paper threatens to burst through the walls. The bride can't shake the feeling that whatever he's holding is connected to the envelope the priest was instructed to read. The atmosphere becomes heavier as the bride remembers the exact moment her past with the ex ended. A moment tangled with secrets she never spoke aloud. The groom touches her arm again, his breath uneven even though he tries to appear steady for her sake. The maid of honor steps forward suddenly, offering to check on the ex as if she is the only one capable of controlling it. The priest raises a hand, gently stopping her, insisting that no further confusion should be added to an already delicate situation. Guests lean back in their seats but keep their eyes locked on the unfolding tension, sensing that a revelation is building just beneath the surface. The groom finally steps slightly away from the bride, moving toward the ex as if hoping to diffuse whatever danger is brewing. The ex stands up at the same moment, surprising everyone and causing a wave of murmurs to roll through the chapel. The maid of honor tenses, her fingers curling around her bouquet like she's bracing for an explosion. The priest takes a step back, clutching the envelope tighter as though it suddenly feels heavier. The bride feels the room tilt again, her breath shallow as she watches the groom and the ex stand face to face in a silence that crackles with unspoken truths. Something in the ex's posture suggests he isn't here to destroy the wedding, but to stop a different kind of destruction. The groom quietly asks the ex why he came, but the ex doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he glances toward the maid of honor, whose expression shifts for the first time into something like fear. The bride feels her stomach drop as she realizes their silent exchange hints at a secret that doesn't involve her past at all. The priest hesitates, opening the ceremonial book again only to close it quickly, as if second-guessing whether to reveal the message. Guests lean so far forward in their seats, it seems they might topple, bordering on desperate to hear the next word. The ex finally whispers that he wasn't invited by chance, and the bride feels the entire room contract in anticipation of what comes next. A thick silence settles after the ex's whispered confession, leaving the bride's heartbeat louder than the murmuring guests. The groom steps back toward her, confusion written across every movement as though he's trying to piece together a puzzle missing too many pieces. The maid of honor forces a smile, but her eyes drift everywhere except the bride's face, a sign of guilt the bride can no longer ignore. The priest shifts uncomfortably, adjusting the envelope inside his ceremonial book as though trying to decide whether the truth inside it is safe to reveal. The bride feels a chill creep through her, sensing that the ex isn't the threat she feared. Something else is lurking behind the careful glances and strained words. Every second feels stretched, as if the room is waiting for someone to finally break. The ex finally lifts the folded paper from his pocket, his voice steadying as he explains he didn't come to cause chaos but to warn them. The bride's breath catches as he says the message in the priest's envelope is connected to something someone sent him days earlier. The groom looks between the two documents, realizing there may be a coordinated attempt to sabotage the ceremony. The maid of honor's shoulders tighten, her composure slipping as though she senses control slipping away. The priest hesitates, torn between protecting the couple and fulfilling the mysterious instructions he was given. The bride steps closer to the ex, unsure if she wants answers or fears them, but knowing she can't escape them now. A ripple of shock spreads through the guests as the ex unfolds his paper and reveals handwriting that looks painfully familiar to the bride. She feels her knees weaken, a memory surfacing of a message she once saw written in the same looping style. The groom steadies her, But even he looks shaken as he realizes the message wasn't written by the ex at all. The maid of honor turns her head away, pretending to adjust her dress, but her hands tremble as though the truth is clawing its way toward her. The priest takes a step toward them, requesting to see the paper, yet he hesitates halfway, unsure whether revealing more will heal or destroy. The bride's pulse races, knowing the moment she dreaded is finally breaking open. The groom asks the ex to read the message aloud, but before he can, the maid of honor cuts in with a raised voice, claiming it's all a misunderstanding. Her interruption only deepens the suspicion, causing the bride to turn and face her with a mix of confusion and betrayal. The ex insists the message was delivered anonymously, and that he originally planned to ignore it until a second envelope appeared at his door, identical to the one the priest now holds. Guests gasp at the revelation, the sound echoing off the chapel walls like a warning. The priest's hand shakes as he pulls the sealed envelope from his book, the tension building so thick it feels suffocating. The bride looks between both messages, sensing they are two halves of the same trap. The priest finally opens the envelope, the soft tear of paper slicing through the nervous silence. The bride clutches the groom's arm, racing for whatever secret has been looming over them. The maid of honor steps back, her eyes darting toward the exit as if preparing to run. The ex watches the priest with a tense expression, hoping the message inside will prove what he came to warn them about. Guests hold their breath collectively, leaning forward in anticipation. As the priest unfolds the letter, his face pales, and he hesitates before reading, as though the truth inside is heavier than he expected. The bride feels everything tipping toward disaster, knowing the next word spoken could shatter everything. The priest lowers his gaze to the letter, his voice trembling as he begins reading the first line, only to stop as the bride's breath hitches in her throat. Something about the tone of the message feels personal, almost cruel, written with the precision of someone who knows exactly where to strike. The groom steps closer, shielding her instinctively, while the ex watches with restless urgency, shifting as though ready to intervene. The maid of honor's composure finally crumbles, her eyes darting left and right as though she's searching for a place to hide from what's coming. Guests whisper louder now, some covering their mouths, others leaning toward one another with morbid curiosity. The bride senses the truth clawing its way forward, threatening to tear apart every fragile piece of peace she built for this day. The priest clears his throat and begins again, reading a line that accuses someone in the room of sabotaging the wedding long before today. The bride feels her pulse pound through her chest as the words unfold, describing missing items, strike instructions, and an unnamed person directing chaos from the shadows. The groom's jaw tightens, his eyes snapping toward the maid of honor, whose hands begin to shake so visibly she quickly hides them behind her bouquet. The ex nods slowly as if confirming something he suspected the moment he arrived. Guests lean forward eagerly, their attention glued to every syllable, while the bride fights the rising dread that the letter is leading toward, a name she doesn't want to hear. The priest continues, revealing that the writer of the letter claims to have proof of a betrayal that predates the wedding planning itself. The bride's legs feel weak, each word landing with the force of a blow she can barely withstand. The groom steps closer to her again, placing a steadying hand on her back, though his own eyes shimmer with confusion and hurt. The ex takes a small step forward, as if preparing to speak, but waits when the priest raises a hand for silence. The maid of honor's breathing quickens, her face turning ghostly as she realizes there's no escape from the words already set into motion. Guests begin to murmur again, their voices blending into an uneasy chorus that fills the room like static. Just as the priest begins the final lines, the maid of honor breaks, shouting that none of this is true, and that the ex is twisting everything. Her voice echoes through the chapel, startling half the guests into silence, and sending the bride's heart racing. The ex immediately fires back, insisting the messages were not written by him and that someone else wanted them to clash today. The groom steps between them, his frustration spilling over as he demands honesty from both sides. The bride watches the confrontation unfold, realizing that the truth is trapped somewhere between fear and guilt. And unless someone confesses soon, the entire ceremony may collapse under the weight of secrets. Desperation fills the room as the priest raises his voice for calm, finishing the letter's final sentence with a weight that sinks into everyone's stomach. The message states that the person behind the sabotage is in plain sight and has been manipulating both the bride and the groom for months. The bride turns slowly toward the maid of honor, whose expression finally cracks under the pressure, revealing a mixture of fear and resignation. The groom watches her closely, recognizing something in her eyes he ignored for too long. The ex steps back, letting the silence grow thick, knowing the next moment may expose the truth he feared they wouldn't believe. Guests hold their breath as the room falls eerily still, waiting for someone to speak, the name that now feels inevitable. Silence grips the chapel after the final line of the letter, stretching so long that the bride wonders if time itself has stopped. The maid of honor stands frozen, her eyes flicking desperately between the bride and groom, as if searching for forgiveness she has not yet earned. The groom takes a slow step toward her, each movement dripping with disbelief, while the bride feels her heart pounding with the weight of a truth she wishes she could unhear. The ex watches carefully, waiting for the moment he knows is coming, the moment when everything falls into place. Guests lean in, unable to look away, drawn to the unraveling disaster like moths to flames. The air grows heavy with the knowledge that nothing said next can undo the damage already done. The groom finally asks the question everyone else has been too afraid to voice, demanding to know what the maid of honor has been hiding. She tries to speak, but the words crumble in her throat as panic spreads across her face. The bride feels torn between anger and heartbreak, remembering every moment she trusted this woman without hesitation. The ex steps forward, revealing that the second envelope delivered to him contained instructions to appear today, supposedly to save the bride from a mistake. Gasps ripple through the crowd as the implication sinks in. The maid of honor tries again to explain, but her trembling voice only deepens the suspicion suffocating the room. The bride's stomach twists as she recalls strange moments from the weeks leading up to the wedding. Missing appointments, misplaced items, and unexplained messages she blamed on stress. Now they fit together too easily, forming a chain of events that points directly toward betrayal. The groom's expression darkens as he realizes he too ignored signs that now seem obvious, moments when the maid of honor inserted herself where she didn't belong. The ex unfolds his paper again and reads a line aloud that claims the wedding was built on a lie orchestrated by someone closest to the couple. Guests murmur loudly, their disbelief turning into shock as the words echo through the chapel. The bride feels her vision blur, overwhelmed by the unraveling truth. Unable to hold back any longer, the maid of honor blurts out that she only acted out of fear of losing the bride to a life she believed wasn't right for her. Her confession spills out in shaky fragments, revealing she sent both messages, manipulated schedules, and even orchestrated the ex's arrival to create doubt on the wedding day. The bride feels a painful wave of betrayal wash over her as she realizes the very person she trusted most engineered the chaos tearing her day apart. The groom steps back, stunned by the depth of manipulation, while the ex lets out a frustrated sigh, realizing he was used as a pawn. Guests erupt in gasps, their shocked faces turning the chapel into a theater of disbelief. As the confession settles into the room, the bride feels a mix of devastation and clarity wash over her. The groom approaches her gently, offering steady support while avoiding looking at the maid of honor, whose shoulders collapse under the weight of her own choices. The ex steps back toward his seat, no longer a threat, but rather a witness to a tragedy he never intended to be part of. The priest closes the letter slowly, as though sealing the end of a chapter filled with lies and manipulation. Guests remain frozen in stunned silence, waiting for the bride to decide what comes next. And though her heart aches, she knows the next step will change everything. The chapel feels hollow after the confession, as though every breath echoes against walls that once promised joy. The bride stands still, trying to hold herself together, while memories of her friendship with the maid of honor flash through her mind like broken pieces of glass. The groom steps toward her slowly, his voice low as he reminds her she doesn't have to face this alone, though she can feel the weight of his own hurt beneath the calm tone. The ex remains silent, watching with a heavy expression that shows he regrets ever stepping through the chapel doors today. The priest clasps his hands, murmuring something under his breath, perhaps a prayer or a plea for peace. Guests watch with tight jaws and wide eyes, knowing the worst may not even be over yet. The groom tries to lead the bride aside for a moment of privacy, but the maid of honor steps forward with trembling steps, pleading for just one chance to explain her heart. The bride feels torn between anger and the remnants of a bond she once cherished. Each word from the maid of honor spills out in desperation, filled with apologies, but also excuses that sting like fresh wounds. The groom gently blocks her from getting too close, sensing the bride's fragile state. The ex clenches his jaw, visibly frustrated by how far the manipulation had gone, wishing he had spoken up sooner. The priest urges calm, though his voice shakes with the tension filling the room. The bride finally speaks, asking the maid of honor why she chose deception instead of honesty. The question hangs in the air like a blade. The maid of honor breaks down, insisting she believed the groom was hiding something, that she was protecting the bride from heartbreak. But the more she explains, the more obvious it becomes that her fears twisted into something darker, a need for control disguised as concern. The groom's face tightens with disbelief as he rejects her claims, saying he never gave her reason to distrust him. The bride feels a wave of exhaustion wash over her, her heart straining under the crush of betrayal and loss. Guests whisper anxiously, unsure how this will end. The ex steps forward, revealing the final piece of the puzzle. The original note he received had a single line at the bottom that the bride and groom never saw. Or he reads it aloud, and the maid of honor's face collapses as the truth becomes undeniable. She never meant for the situation to spiral this far, but once it began, she felt trapped in her own lies, trying to justify one bad decision with another. The bride's eyes well with tears, not from anger now, but from the painful acceptance that the person she relied on most became the architect of her suffering. The groom looks at the floor, overwhelmed by the weight of what could have been if the truth had remained hidden. Guests murmur in hushed, uneasy disbelief as the truth settles into place. The bride takes a deep breath, stepping away from all of them to gather her strength. She looks at the groom first, finding solace in the quiet steadiness of his gaze. Then she turns toward the maid of honor, whose sobs fill the chapel like a mournful echo of their broken friendship. The bride, though trembling, makes it clear she cannot continue the ceremony until she has space to think, and her voice carries a calm finality that silences the room. The groom respects her decision instantly, offering his hand but keeping enough distance to give her room. The ex nods, relieved she's choosing clarity over chaos. The priest steps back, understanding this moment marks a shift none of them can reverse. The chapel sits in uneasy silence as the bride walks slowly down the aisle, each step carrying the weight of everything she's endured today. Guests watch with held breath, unsure whether this moment marks an ending or a beginning. The groom follows a few steps behind, not pushing, simply waiting for her to choose her next move. The ex remains near the front row, hands folded, a quiet witness to the final unraveling. The maid of honor stays where she is, shoulders shaking, unable to lift her head. The bride stops halfway down the aisle, turning toward the altar, allowing herself a moment to breathe in the hollow quiet. For the first time since the chaos began, she senses a fragile strength forming inside her, something steady enough to carry her through whatever comes next. The bride finally lifts her gaze to the priest, asking what happens now that the truth has been laid bare. The priest's expression softens as he explains that the ceremony must pause until she feels ready, reminding her that no union should begin under emotional chaos. The groom steps closer, offering reassurance without pressure, his voice steady as he tells her her feelings matter more than the schedule or the guests. The maid of honor lets out a quiet sob, whispering apologies that float through the still air like fragile shards of regret. The ex sits silently, staring at the floor, wishing the day hadn't turned into a battlefield of old wounds and misguided intentions. The bride listens to all of it, yet her heart pulls her toward a decision only she can make. Taking a few quiet steps back, the bride faces everyone gathered, her voice steady, though her hands shake. She tells them she won't let deception define her wedding day, but she refuses to move forward until she knows she's doing so with clarity, not fear. Guests shift in their seats, moved by her strength in the middle of heartbreak. The groom nods slowly, visibly proud of her resolve, even as uncertainty lingers in his eyes. The maid of honor lowers her head deeper, clearly understanding she has lost not just trust, but a friendship she once believed was unbreakable. The ex exhales, relieved that the bride is reclaiming control after everything he unwillingly walked into. The room feels still, waiting for her next breath. The bride turns toward the groom, searching his face for any sign that today's chaos has fractured their bond. Instead, she finds steady eyes filled with quiet love, a softness that assures her he is here for more than just the ceremony. He offers her his hand, not as a demand, but as an invitation. She takes it slowly, feeling a warmth she thought the day had stolen from her. Guests exchange hopeful glances, sensing a shift toward healing. The maid of honor covers her mouth, tears streaming as she realizes the couple may still find their way forward, despite everything she tried to prevent. The ex looks away, giving them a moment of privacy even within the crowded chapel. With the groom's hand in hers, the bride turns back to the chapel and announces that the ceremony will continue, but only after a brief pause to reset the space, breathe, and allow everyone to steady themselves. Her voice carries confidence now, no longer shaken by the shadows of deceit. The guests rise with gentle applause, relieved and moved by her strength. The maid of honor steps back quietly, understanding her place in the ceremony has ended. The ex nods from his seat, proud of the courage she found in the ruins of the day. The priest prepares to restart the ceremony soon, his eyes warm with respect. For the first time in what feels like hours, a glimmer of hope fills the chapel, signaling that love, even shaken, can still stand.